Hi, today on the podcast, I want to talk about dealing with your grief, the very first steps that you need to take to deal with your grief effectively. Okay, so what are the very first things that you need to do as the griever to deal with your grief effectively? Grief is an inevitable part of our life. I talk about this all the time. At some point, we are all going to have grieving experience. Some of us, if you're like me, will have multiple grieving experiences throughout your life. You will have multiple grieving experiences throughout your life. I don't think that there is anyone who makes it to full adulthood who will not have experienced some sort of grief in their life. Whether it's the passing of a loved one, the end of a relationship, a major life change, losing your job, financial changes, moving and leaving all your friends and family behind, leaving all of your friends behind when you were a little kid and your mom promised you were going to get to go back and see them again, and you never got a chance to go back and see them again. It's crucial that we understand that dealing with grief effectively is the first step towards healing. Hear me out on this. Once we have that loss, the first thing we want to do is run. We want to run from the pain. We want to get out of here as fast as we can. This is why, I'm going to say this. This is why many grievers will come to me and tell me, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to die too. I want to go be with him. I want to go be with her, because our first response is to flee. Our first response to grief is to flee. I guess I'm going to say that maybe our second, or they may come at the same time, because your first response is that you're going to be numb, the shock and the numbness. And then when that starts to wear off just a little bit, you have this response to leave and get out. Okay, so you have this response to leave and get out. The next thing that's going to happen, and I'm talking weeks, days, and months after the loss. I'm not talking about the immediate, because in the immediate, especially if it's a death, you're probably planning a funeral. You're getting friends and family are calling you. People are bringing over the ham and the potato salad. There's a lot of stuff going on. That's not the part that I'm talking about. I'm talking about once it quiets down. Once it quiets down and all the family have gone back home, all the work colleagues have gone back to work, and it gets quiet. It gets extremely quiet. And your only thought is, I need to go be with them. I need to leave this place. The number one thing that I want you to do is acknowledge this. Grief is an emotional experience that takes place in your heart. It does not take place in your brain. And your brain is going to be sending you a ton of messages, because it perceives this grief as danger. It perceives what you're going through as danger, and it's going to try to get you out of this danger. So one of the first most crucial steps in dealing with grief is acknowledging that grief is emotional. That grief is feelings or emotions. You can use either word here. We use them interchangeably, that we feel in our heart. Sad, mad, glad, afraid, embarrassed. They're all emotions that we feel in our heart. And we will feel a wide range of emotions, sometimes sadness, sometimes anger, sometimes guilt will come up. And even the numbness will be there, sometimes for days. Even weeks after your loss, you can still go back to feeling the numbness, like your brain is just not thinking. We often tell grievers, don't make any life-altering decisions in their grief, because you're not in your right mind. You're in your grieving brain. A griever's brain is an absent-minded brain. It's a painful brain. Don't try to suppress the emotions as much as you can. That's the number one thing. Try as much as you can to lean into the emotions. Instead, allow yourself to experience this grief. Do you know that this grief was given to you? This grief was designed to help you process the pain. The grief was given to you to help you process the pain, but that's not what we do. The grief was given to us, comes with this pain, and then the next thing we do is run. We run as far as we can from this pain because we don't want to experience it. Don't try to suppress the emotions. Instead, allow yourself to feel them, and express them fully, even 1 minute. If you can sit in the sadness for 1 minute, just 1 minute, from 1 full minute to go around and sit in sadness, it's like I'm blowing out. It's like a little bit of grief is released from you. But instead, what we do is we push back. We push back against the emotions. We try to push back as tight as we can on the door, and we don't allow the emotions in. It is okay to cry, my friend. Give yourself permissions to cry. On crying, on tears, I want you to know this. Tears are not necessarily a sign of grief. We have grievers that cry all the time. We have grievers that don't cry at all. Whichever is showing up for you, I want you to be okay with it. If you're crying nonstop, it's okay. If you're not crying at all, which sometimes eludes us, the tears elude us, and then we start freaking out because we're not crying at all. I absolutely have grievers that come to me and say, but I cried already, because we attach crying with grieving. We think if we shed these tears already, then it's going to be okay. Then that once the tears stop coming, then the grief is over. Girlfriend, it is just beginning, right? It's absolutely okay to cry. It's okay not to cry. Whichever one is showing up for you, be okay with it. It is absolutely okay to vent about how the funeral went, to vent about the hospital, the way they treated him, the way they talked to you at the last moment, to vent about how mad you were at him before he died, how heartbroken you were. It's especially okay for you to vent if the grief was tragic, to talk about I can't even think of the word. The word just eluded me. Why did it just go out of my head? The unfairness of what has just happened to you. We have to vent, not just vent, but talk. So one of the first stages we're going to do is we're going to be crying, we're going to feel numb, and we're going to be talking. The griever has to hear them say the thing out loud. They have to hear, he's not here. They have to hear themselves saying, Dad died today. You have to hear yourself say it. It is when you say it that the heart and the brain starts to line up onto the same page. It's okay to seek solace, to seek being alone, to seek privacy for your grief time. It's okay to have quiet times while grieving. It's okay to seek solace even in the presence of your family and friends. 100% is when you should be seeking it for sure. Remember, it is okay to grieve whenever it shows up for you. If that's in the middle of the grocery store, if that's why you're driving your car, if that's why you're in your classroom, if that's why you're sitting in church, if you're standing at the bank and you're talking to the bank teller, whenever the grief shows up for you, it is okay to express it. Here's what happens to most of us though. We feel bad that we're making the other person feel uncomfortable. And so we don't want to share the grief. We don't want to let it out. And so we swallow it down. And we continually swallow it down. And every time you swallow it down, it's like swallowing down a lump of coal. And eventually that coal is going to get overflowed in our stomach and it's going to have to come out. And what I don't want to happen to you is that you vomit out this coal onto the wrong person. So if you are blowing out just a little bit, and that's what happens with the tears, it allows the pressure to be taken off so that we don't get built up like a ticking time bomb and we can express that grief. So in the first stages, you're going to acknowledge that you're grieving. You're going to allow it. You're going to feel numb and you're going to feel the emotions. At some point in that process, you are going to start seeking support. First, you're probably going to seek support from the ones closest to you. You're going to seek support from your friends and family and your next door neighbor. And you know that the lady at church also lost her husband, so you're going to try to seek support from her. And what's going to happen when you seek support from those around you and those in your community is you're going to start feeling empty. It's going to feel empty because They, number one, don't want to make you feel sad. So a lot of times they're not going to talk about it. Two, you're going to bring it up and they're going to change the subject. Three, it's never going to seem like the appropriate time. Or four, you bring it up and then it's just left there. You just mention it, you vomit it all out, you say all the things you need to say, and there's no support coming back. Because the average person around us doesn't know how to handle a grieving experience. And they don't know how to handle a griever. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. So what we get is a ton of misinformation. We get a ton of misinformation out there. So when I'm telling you to seek support, I'm wanting you to seek a support group. I'm wanting you to seek, most importantly, an educational program like one of the ones that I teach. I want you to seek your therapist, your psychologist, your psychiatrist. And even in those, you're going to have to go through a couple until you find the right fit for you. The one that you know is the right fit for you. Talking about your feelings can provide immense relief. Talking about the feelings, talking about what is happening to you, and talking about your person. Talking about getting the phone call and finding out that he had died. Talking about being at the hospital and being in the room when he had died. Talking about holding his hand. Talking about you not taking his hand. Whatever that thing is for you, you get to talk about it and share about it in your support. Surround yourself with people who care about you and who can help you feel less alone and more understood. You're going to understand who these people are right away. They're probably the friends that are already reaching out to you and that are willing to listen. They're willing to listen to you cry about your brokenness and your broken heart. They're willing to be there for you. Number 3. Okay, so first steps is allowing the feelings and emotions. Step number 2 is finding the support. Step number 3 is while all of this is going on, you've got to be taking care of yourself. You got to eat. You've got to drink. You've got to get sleep. You've got to see your doctor. You've got to make sure your medication is right. Deal with any illnesses that you may have. Deal with anything that you need that's pressing on you. Talk to your job. Maybe you're only going to get those 3 days off, girl. And I don't know what to tell you because for some reason, this country just doesn't understand. Other countries, they give us 12 weeks at least. But you got to take care of yourself. Avoid drinking too much alcohol. Avoid recreational drugs. Avoid the things that we use to avoid. Sex, pornography, fantasy, reading fantasy books, long hours on TV, all of the things that we use to avoid the pain. I want you to avoid the avoiding tools as much as you can. It is really easy to pour that extra glass of wine. Why? I poured the first glass of wine and it seemed like it took the pain away and it felt good. And I'm telling you this from experience, my friend. So I pour that second glass of wine. And in that second glass of wine, I drop deep down into that grief and I start crying and crying and crying. And everybody goes to sleep. And I just am allowed to have this grieving moment. And when I wake up the next morning, I almost feel like I got it out, like I feel relief. But quickly it comes back. It's not going to go anywhere. And the wine just made it deeper and more painful. Make sure you're eating well. You're getting the rest. You know, everyone throws around this word self-care, and I use it a lot because people talk about it. Self-care is not just the biggest piece of chocolate cake you can find and a warm bath. Self-care is also allowing in the pain of grief when it shows up for you. Self-care is saying no to your girlfriend's baby shower because you know you can't handle it. Self-care is setting up a spot in your house where you know you're going to go to grieve. Self-care is setting up your grief corner. Self-care is in that grief corner, having that journal, having photos, having something to write on, having Kleenex, having your Bible if that's important to you. That's your self-care, is going after what you're going to need to go through this process. Create rituals for you, especially if the rituals that you were used to and they are now absent with him. If we went out to dinner every day together, every Thursday and every Sunday, On Thursdays and Sundays, you may want to have a guest to go out to dinner. You may not go out to dinner anymore on Thursdays and Sundays. You may change it to Mondays and Fridays, or you might not go out to eat right now. If you want to change up some things in your house, you can change your furniture around a little bit so that you have room for your grieving corner. You can light a candle in your house. You can change your bedspread so that when you go in there, it's not reminding you of you and him together. Are any of these little tricks going to make the grief go away? No, it is not. But sometimes we have to do the things we have to do. Change the route that you go so you're not driving past the hospital every day. It is absolutely okay to go one block out of your way so that you don't have to drive past that hospital. But you're going to want to think of new rituals for yourself. Create new rituals that will also honor the person. Create new rituals that will honor them on their birthday, on your anniversary, on holidays. And that's a whole separate podcast that I don't want to get into, but I will also lead you to a book that I wrote on that. Seek professional help and support. So support from your family and friends is very important, but professional help is also important. Understanding what this is important. Understanding, and that this is grief. Understanding how it's going to affect you, how it's going to affect you now, how it's going to affect you in 1 year, how it's going to affect you in 6 months, how it's going to affect you in 10 years. You may go through a couple of therapists. You may do an educational program like the one that I teach. You may go to your psychiatrist. You may go to your psychologist. Whatever you find that works for you, I'm imploring you to get into a program. And a lot of these work really well together. I have a lot of clients that do therapy and my educational program as well. So you don't have to just stick to one. Listening to this podcast is a great help for you. Going on Facebook, joining Facebook groups, joining private groups, whatever you need to do to help you through is of the most importance. Don't just act and pretend like this is going to go away and that you're never going to feel this again. That, my friend, I call the Academy Award-winning behavior. I have grievers that act like nothing has ever happened. They just push it down and they just move on. And I'm telling you, that is not going to work, because at some point it's going to come back full-fledged. Healing from grief is never going to be easy. It is going to be a process. And it is going to be a process that mostly involves you making the right decisions that's right for you, and taking the action steps to go along with that grieving process. Be patient with yourself, my friends. Be patient with yourself and understand that you're on a healing journey that's going to take its own course. And sometimes you're going to go off that journey, and that's okay. And sometimes on that journey, you're going to have a great day of relief. You might even have a week or a month, and then you can get hit again. I don't know what it's going to be like for you, but it's going to change. There's no timetable for grieving. And just because they give you 3 days off doesn't mean you're supposed to be done with it. And just because you're at month 3 and someone typed in on your Facebook page, aren't you over this already? They're crazy. I don't know when you're going to be over it. And first of all, don't ever ask anybody that. How do you get over losing your husband? How do you get over losing your child? That never happens. Yes, grief is painful. It is 100% painful. But it's essential for us to remember that there will be good times, and you will actually laugh sometimes in your grief. There will be times of joy. There will be memories that you share that will absolutely bring up joy in your heart. Maybe not in the beginning, maybe not in the first 6 months, but there will be a part where you won't be crying so much. There will come a time where you will look at the photos and your heart will be filled with joy. There will come a time where you can celebrate them, and the longing for them will have lessened, and you'll be embracing positive aspects of your relationship with them. You will have dealt effectively with your grief, And you also will be a great guide to others. And you will know from here on out, when someone tells you they have a loss, you know what it feels like to be a member of this club. The club that you never chose to be a part of, but you are now a part of it. My friends, I want to tell you that your life will be forever changed. You will never be the person that you were before your loss occurred. You're never going to be the person that you were before your dad died, before your nephew died. But you will be a beautiful, strong, vibrant person again. That I can promise you once you go after the pain. My name is Sharon Brubaker. I am the owner, the proud owner of the premier Grieve School. I teach an educational program called Forever Changed. I teach a program that walks you through the process of grieving. And I'd be honored to have you take a part in my program. But in my show notes here, I'm giving you a link. And in that link, I'm giving you some valuable information, places where you can find me on social media. But I'm also giving you access to 2 books, The Griever's Guide and Surviving the Holidays. Both of those are in the link tree that I'm going to be giving to you here. In there, you will be able to read all about grief and come up with tips for surviving your holidays. Also, will be a link to set an appointment with me so you and I can talk and we can share our grief together. We can share our grief journey. I have been a traveler on this journey for 17 years and longer, because I had losses in my childhood, but definitely for 17 years, I have been a traveler on this journey. I have walked with women who are grieving the loss due to death, hundreds of women, and I would be honored to be on your journey. Click the link below and find out more about who I am and what I have to offer. I look forward to hearing from you and meeting you in person. Thank you, friend.